All right, hello and welcome to Artificially Intelligent, conversations had by a black musician in Philadelphia and a white comedian in the flyover state of Iowa. The black musician is my good friend Barrett Antar Goodwin. We've known each other for more years than should be allowed, and that's the preface. I'm Nathan Timmel. So, We have three things we can talk about. One is I sent an email to myself last week at the end of the show. We started on another set of tracks, and I said, we've been on for an hour. Let's talk about that next week. But then, life happens, and I sent you a news article and possibly touch on that. But the first thing I want to talk about is I should have researched this. There's a song, "Breaking Up Is Hard to Do." Who sings it? The Shirelles? No, I don't know. I got a couple friends going through breakups, and it's not funny, but it's funny because I want to talk about one of them. He said he told me two things, and I told him one thing in response, and I held one thing back because I figured it'd be inappropriate to say. He said that he was trying to maintain a positive attitude. And my response was, don't, because the best way to heal during a breakup is to just allow yourself to feel whatever emotions you're feeling, but to acknowledge them. Don't just sit in a funk. If you're angry, say, okay, I'm feeling anger. Now I'm feeling sad. Now I'm feeling rejected. Whatever you feel, acknowledge it so that you can process it. If you try and just put on a happy face and ignore it, it's just going to drag it out. What I didn't say was the second thing he said to me was, "This came out of the blue. This was a bomb that was dropped on me." And I didn't say, "No, it wasn't," because he's probably not ready to hear it. But every relationship I've been in that has ended, as you know, I got dumped. I never broke up with anybody. I always got dumped. And in the moment, you feel like, oh, how could this have happened? But deep down inside, you kind of know why it happened, especially when you look back on maybe the last 6 months of the relationship or the entire relationship. You see all the warning signs and the red flags. It's never a surprise. It's everything you ignored or didn't want to acknowledge. And, I would find myself going, oh yeah, that should have been a problem right there. Or that was a red flag. So going off those two thoughts, allowing yourself to feel and process your emotions, and there are red flags all throughout bad relationships. What are your thoughts just going off those two? And then we can go off and running from that point.
I feel like in most of my relationships it ended, whether I ended it or someone else ended it, it always came, if I was the one who ended it, it came at the point at which I felt that there was nothing more that could be done that I hadn't already tried, that I was out of options, Like breaking up for me was always a last resort. It was not a first resort. I know for some people, I know people who just went through relationships, and just had tons of them. And I had a handful, but I was like a serial monogamist,
Same.
And so, like breaking up for me, when it happened, yeah, most of them, when it happened, I was almost glad, like she had beat me to a place. Like she had beat me there, but only by a few months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was headed there too. You know what I mean? She just, I mean, especially particularly the older ones as I got older. Like very few of those came out of the blue. Even and the ones that I ended, it did come out of the blue for one of them, but I don't know why. You know what I mean? It's kind of like what you're talking about. Like
well, let me interrupt quickly.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to talk about this. I mean, it's not my place to talk about this. I have two friends that are going through breakups. I think, or did I say that already? I said I was going to talk about one of them. The other one, my other friend did pull the trigger. And I asked the question, well, did you just drop a bomb? Or did you say, hey, I've been having these thoughts. I think we should try and work on these things or counseling or whatever. And he said, no, I just dropped the bomb. And I said, are you sure that's fair? And then when he explained, like you said, this was the end of everything. This was the last resort. It's not like it just one day he woke up and said, I'm done. I mean, this had been a long time coming. And you could argue it's unfair to just drop that bomb, but the partner will have to know that, yeah, but the whole point was, like you said, nothing more could be done at that point. The breakup
Yeah.
is absolutely the right thing to do. And after hearing the reasons, I'm like, yeah, you could probably sway a jury with that in court. Now, there are two sides to every
Yeah.
story, but I think the other side, having received the news, you're always unhappy up front. You're always shocked and in denial and blamey and pointing fingers and, okay, well, you're doing this. This is your fault. It's all on you. And then, like I said, you'll ease into acceptance and understanding. And okay, so I hear you when you say it's the last thing. It's not the last straw, but you're out of options. It's at a certain stage.
Yeah. I find that for me, and this is like, I don't know about what your buddy was, how he did it, but for me, it was always like, hey, like these things would come up. You know what I mean? They'd be the things that we would argue about, or they would come up, or something would happen, and
Right.
it was like there were just things. It was just like, good lord, like this again, like, and it was like, man, I thought like for and in retrospect, it's hard, you know, like life is hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
And
that's
it
not true.
hurts. Pain is real.
Like,
Emotional
like,
pain is real.
but I mean, like, life is hard all the time,
Hmm.
and it's also easy all the time, and it's also a lot of things all the time. It's just kind of what you choose to focus on, you know. But like being a young person and being in relationships and figuring out who you are, and while also trying to be coupled up with all the societal pressures and stuff, like it's not easy, you know. Like in retrospect, I can look back at that and I can see that some of the things that I was asking her to do were things she needed to do, but there were also things I needed to do, you know? And some of the fights that I had with some of my girlfriends, they were right. I could see that now. You know what I mean? I couldn't see it then, and that's part of the problem is that like we for me, the last straw was a point at which I felt like these problems were things that could be fixed with a little bit of energy, and they weren't willing to put the energy in to fix the problems, right? And for me, I can remember though that there were times in which they would ask me to do things, and it was my ego that I couldn't get past to do them, that in subsequent relationships I did do them, and they were really the right thing to do, and I did them happily, you know and so part of it is just like, again, like I feel like it's hard to be a young person in love, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's just not easy, you know
Not
what I
even
mean? Like,
young. I mean, one
just
of these
trying to
guys
figure it
is
the
young.
fuck
The other
out.
is our age. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, I think that you're always trying to figure it out. You know what I
hmm
mean? Yeah, like it's just like like I think we're capable of something really amazing if we can just get past our egos and we can just get past that stuff. And I know it sounds ridiculous, like this could tie right into the other conversation, like magic. Watch this, you know, because I feel like every religious leader has talked about it for years in every one of the books, that there is something inside of us that could be amazing if we would somehow let go of certain things, right? We would be able to do that. And people used to learn that in church, but oddly enough, I heard they're not going to church that much these days.
Well, that was the other topic.
I'm kidding. We don't have to go down there.
We can. I just
thought it was funny.
It is funny. The topic that he's hinting at is, for the first time in American history, more people do not belong to a religious institution such as a mosque or a church or any form than do. I think it's something like 47 to 53%. It was always at its peak, 80% of people went to a church or something, but now 53% of Americans don't have a religious, they might say they're casual Christians or casually religious, but they don't go on the regular. And I mean, we can talk about that. But I want to circle back to two thoughts. My wife and I had an argument the other night, and it was really productive. And I don't think she and I, and that's probably, hopefully, knock on wood, why this marriage works. I don't think we've ever had an argument that wasn't resolved, where we went to bed angry or frustrated or just, all right, well, we're not going to talk about this now. It was maybe okay, so how do I put this? I'm going to make this up because I can't really remember. Say it was a 30-minute conversation. It was 10 minutes of good, and then we slipped into 10 minutes of argument because there was a miscommunication within the first 10 minutes, and then 10 minutes of good at the end. So we talked, we had an issue, so we bumped heads. This is, wait, you did this, I did this, you did that, like pointing fingers. And by the end of that 10 minutes, oh, okay. And then we continued the conversation on a good path. And then, and this is stupid to say, but communication is key. It's when it comes to these arguments, or not just arguments, when it comes to problems in any relationships, like you said, you have the same argument over and over. Well, if nothing gets resolved, why are you having the same argument? And the thing with my wife and I, this argument we had was something we've talked about in the past. And so I'm just trying to spitball here because I hadn't thought of it going into this podcast. Say on a scale of 1 to 10 of arguments, maybe a year ago it was a 10 and now it's a 5. Like, it keeps getting reduced. It doesn't elevate. If you're in a long-standing relationship where the same thing keeps coming over and over and it gets worse and worse because you're not dealing with it, that's a bad sign. With my wife and I, we got in the argument. She's like, hey, remember we've had this argument before? Oh yeah, we have. Well, what do we do about it? Oh yeah, this. Oh, okay. Now we've come to a meeting point and we moved on. And hopefully the next time we bump up against this, because, life is cyclical. We're not automatically perfect people. We will argue again, but hopefully next time it will be a 3, and you just keep going until it's out of the system. And again, spitballing here, making this all up, I think that could be a sign of a healthy relationship versus a damaged one. The idea of every time you argue about the same thing, does it get worse and worse, or do you come to a resolution quicker because you realize, oh, we've had this talk, now we're moving together? What do you think of that bullshit that just popped into my head?
I think you're right. I think that one, I think, yeah, communication is a big part of it. And I think that the idea of being able to have accountability, it sounds like your wife said, hey, we've had this argument before. It's like, right, and this is how we solved it last time. This is how we resolved. It's like, oh yeah. And both of you were able to, she was able to call it out fast enough, before it got to a point at which it spiraled out of control.
Right. Right.
Because, and that might have been what used to happen. Maybe it used to spiral out of control. And what took 30 minutes, and it was 10 minutes of good, 10 minutes of bad, 10 minutes of good, was maybe 90 minutes. And it was 10 minutes of good. Or
we'd have to part ways, where she'd go into the bedroom, or, okay, timeout, where we'd have to just go to our separate corners because we're too heated. Absolutely. Right. And now we didn't have any. Yeah. Good call.
Right. Exactly. And it's just, so I think that it really is some kind of evolution, because it's true. If you don't, this is, again, it comes down to the ego stuff. It really does. It comes down to that. It comes down to realizing that, in every argument, you can start it, right? Like you and I might have talked about this, or maybe even on the podcast. Like I can remember driving home and having an imaginary argument with my girlfriend at the time. You know, like driving back to our place and having an imaginary argument in my head because I was running a little bit late. You know, and I was gonna have to hear it again about how I'm always blah 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 and all this other stuff, and just running these psychodramas in my brain, right? And
So
then I get
so if you were prepared, if you walked through the door, if she would say A, you would have B come back ready. Is that what you're
right,
saying?
absolutely.
Okay.
I'd know exactly how to handle, because again, when you've had the same arguments 1,000 times, you do know how the person's gonna respond,
Yeah.
and you can arguably do it. The thing is that when I got home, all I did was, no matter what she said, I maneuvered us into a place where she started the argument that I was thinking we were supposed to have anyway. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I could make it look like it was her fault, because you know exactly how to do that. Like if you wanted to go start an argument with Lydia right now and you wanted to make it be all her fault, you could do that and it would take you no effort whatsoever. Right? You know exactly what buttons to push to have her say something that is out of line, so you have a right to be pissed off. You know
To
what
get
I
hurt
mean?
feelings and say, I can't believe
Right.
you said that, but I
Exactly.
pushed the buttons. Right.
Right. Exactly. And she might even feel bad afterwards, and you started it, and you know you
That's
might have.
called gaslighting, isn't it? I think
Right,
something like that.
but I mean, I think we do it to each other unconsciously. I don't think we do it consciously. I think we do it unconsciously. And again, man, we get a medal for this because I'm so damn brilliant. Um, I think it's because we put too much pressure on relationships. We put pressure on them in a way that is unfair, in the way, because there's other things that are supposed to deal with that. Like relationships have become, for most people, have become our new religion. And they have to be perfect, and they have to do this, and they have to do this, and they're going to solve all my problems and all. Like literally, a good relationship is like God. Like, oh God, that's going to so like get so taken out of context one
No, no,
day.
I hear you. I was going to
You know what I
disagree for a
mean?
second because I'll do an improv trick, the yes
Mhm.
and, where you always agree and expand. Yes, I do think relationships are the new religion, and a good relationship is God. When it comes to pressure, I think all too often we put too much pressure on the other person to, I don't want to say salvage the relationship, but keep the relationship going. Sometimes we tend to forget that it's a power balance. 50-50, 55-45, 60-40, but back to 50-50. But if it runs at 70-30 constantly, it's going to fail because that's a power
Yeah,
imbalance.
yes.
And yeah, so we put we put relationships up on a pedestal. We read too much. We put too much faith in them. We believe that, oh, if I just get in a relationship, it will solve all my other problems.
Mhm,
And then the onus is on the other person to be what we want them to be, not what they are. And that is
mhm,
very problematic when we,
yes.
yeah, I'm not going to say any different from that. When we want them to be what we want them to be instead of who they are. And trying to think here, I've been guilty of that, but I've also been, I don't want to say the victim on the other side of that.
Mhm. I mean, I think that it goes both ways. I think that we want that from them, and they want that for us. Like what
Yeah,
we really want is someone who validates the person we want to feel like we are, you know, and
that's
the
goddamn
person,
insightful.
and yeah, and I think, the person somehow supports that, and when they do something that doesn't support that, that's a problem. You know what I mean? Because, and it's generally some part of ourselves that we don't want to look at. It's not some part that doesn't exist. It's just a part that we chose that we're not going to look at. You know what I mean? And that is, I think, why relationships can sometimes offer the most growth, because they force you to see the parts of yourself that you are unwilling to look at, because your partner, like, all right, I'll tell you a quick story if it's not too much of a tangent.
Go for
Um,
it.
when I had the studio in Hoboken, one of my friends had a studio space there, and he was having issues with his girlfriend. And so, and they lived together. They lived together for a while. And so we're talking about it, and he said, you know, I get really mad at her though, and she just pushes my buttons, and I get mad, and then I blow up on her, and because I get my temper from my father, and I need to work on it. And I said, well, if you think you're blowing up on her is irrational, then you should just practice it. He goes, what am I supposed to do that? And he was a musician. So I was like, man, and I said, when you were learning how to play your instrument, you did all these exercises and did all this stuff. I said, man, like, listen, you're in a relationship with a woman. You'll have ample time to practice patience. I promise you.
Even
but,
something as
but
not as innocuous as that is going to get us canceled. Oh, being sexist
no,
now. Women are
no, but
no.
I mean,
I know, I know.
I really did immediately. I really did immediately follow it up with, and her too, right?
Right,
Because
right.
just being in relationship with another person, like you and I being roommates, is an opportunity for us to fucking practice patience. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Us
it's
being
just like
friends, us being podcast
right,
partners.
right. It's just like if you have an issue to work on, you will find that your life will give you many opportunities to practice that thing. You will find that that's what it is. And a relationship to me will do that the most. It will do that on the deepest level. It will give you an opportunity to see the parts of yourself that you struggle hardest not to see. And if you're willing to pay attention to them, a good relationship can be something where you can grow immensely, if you're willing to pay
Especially when it
attention.
gets to, and I'm not knocking, relationships are all good, but there's boyfriend, girlfriend, we each have our own space. Okay, that's still a relationship. It's still tough. There's partner, boyfriend, or boyfriend, whatever. There are relationships where you live together. Okay, now
Yes.
you're right on top of one another. Then there's marriage where you've added this legal aspect to it
Yeah,
with a
it's illegal and
contract. And
financial. It's all
yeah,
kinds of
I
stuff.
mean,
Yeah.
so it gets, yeah, you have ample practice, and that's why I make the joke sometimes, but it's a truism. The earlier you get married in life, the greater the chance it will fail, because
Hmm.
I make the joke about people getting married in their 20s. Oh, that's your starter marriage, good for you. Because fuck, if I had been married in my 20s, my first relationship in my 20s that I learned so much from, like the power imbalance shit, like, oh yeah, if I'm giving 70%, no wonder if like it, it helped me immensely being in a damaging relationship. Every one of my relationships, the good and the bad, brought me to a point where now, knock on wood, I am married and will be for, a very long time, until death. I mean,
Yeah.
anything can happen, but like I said, we seem to be, and I'm getting better. I'm not going to go on about my marriage. I'm just saying that everything I failed at in life has hopefully taught me something, and I'm still failing at things, and hopefully I'm still learning things. I don't have all the answers. I'm not an expert in anything, but I hopefully, like the other night, took that as an opportunity to have a really meaningful, good discussion with my wife during and especially after the argument section, where it wasn't, neither
Hmm.
one of us was yelling. We were just sort of very tense with one another. Um, and yeah, it's on my mind because it just happened, but it was a great learning experience. And I like that, because I think in your 20s, you tend to run from those experiences because you don't like them. If someone shines a spotlight on the parts of you you don't like looking at, then it's easy to just, not easy, but you break up, you move on to the next relationship. I'm in my 20s. What am I going to do? You have very little accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because like the way that you and your wife handle something like that, it's the kind of tools that you learn from therapy and things like that. You know what I mean? Like, like I don't know many people who have not been in some kind of program that taught them how to think differently, right? Whether it was a military thing, an intense college class, a therapy thing, an AA thing, you know what I mean?
A Scientology thing, our
A
favorite.
sign. right, a
saved both of us.
Scientology thing, right?
Oh, Ron,
Exactly, right.
took you by surprise with that one. Sorry.
But like, I feel, I feel like those. I feel like we're not raised to think that way. We're not raised to be accountable. We're raised to
Hmm.
pretend we're accountable. I mean, like everybody says, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but they really mean you do that, not me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I should be, I work hard and I deserve X, Y, and Z. I was getting into an argument with somebody the other day about dogs, about their dog got attacked by another dog. And they said these kinds of dogs shouldn't be allowed off leashes. And I was like, well, there's leash laws for all dogs. Yeah, but my dog is fine because my dog is well trained and my dog should be allowed off the leash because my dog is harmless. This dog is harmful, And I was like, well, okay, but, you know, there's leash laws for everybody for a reason, because all dogs bite and all fish have bones. Like, that's just how it is, right? Your dog may not bite today, but all dogs bite because that's what they have those teeth for, right? And it's like, but that's not what we want. What we want is for everybody else to keep their dog on a leash, and we're allowed to keep our dog off the leash. But but everybody else is an asshole, and we deserve the freedoms. We should be able to run the stop signs and run the red lights and go 15 miles over the speed limit because we're good drivers.
Right.
But everybody else is an idiot. Everybody else cuts us off. But when we cut somebody off, that person's an asshole for not understanding that we didn't mean to do it. It's not our fault. Don't get mad at us. But when somebody cuts us off, I mean, like, we're trained to, like, to
Well,
be
it's
judgy and shitheads and not be accountable for ourselves.
we're trained to
You know what I
justify
mean?
everything we do.
Right, as being right. Like, it's a kind of arrogance that we have this thing where it's like, I think it, therefore it must be true. Right? Like, and it's like, oh, and that goes good and bad, right? Like, we think shitty things about ourselves and think, well, yeah, that must be true because I think it because I'm so fucking smart. It's like, really? If you were so smart, you wouldn't be in all this goddamn trouble, right? So,
Right.
how so? Should you really trust yourself? Yeah. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean that in an honest way. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, like we believe that our opinions are so fucking right and our thoughts are so fucking like divinely inspired, and they're not. They're based on a fucking a compilation of our fucking shitty childhood traumas, our upbringing, the memories we hold on to, and how we've distorted them vastly over the years. You know what I mean? And the
And our
experiences that
egos,
we had.
and
Right,
you get our ego
right.
involved,
Yeah,
and
right.
it's
I
all
mean,
bets are
right.
off.
Yeah, like how we interpret our memories and interpret the things that happen to us in a way that makes our ego feel justified. It's like, that's what our thoughts and beliefs are based on. They're based on that. They're not based on facts. There's no facts here. I
Nope.
mean, what? This fucking nonsense,
They've
you
done
know?
memory study after memory study after memory study, and they all say the same thing. As soon as it goes into our brain, our ego gets involved to protect us.
Yes,
And like you just said, it
right.
distorts and it manipulates, not because it's evil, not because we're actively thinking like, ooh, I'm going to make sure that in that fight, I was the victim. It's just that our brain is unconsciously protecting us. And then a
Yeah.
year later, hey, remember that fight? Oh, yeah, I didn't start that. What? I mean,
Oh, dude, it's so funny you say that. I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
no, I
Uh,
was just
all
confirming what you
right.
said.
All right. No, I feel like I'm running on at the mouth, so
No, that's fine.
whatever.
The more you
But
talk, the less I have to.
ah, I had a conversation with an ex girlfriend a couple weeks ago, and I remember why we broke up, and I remember what I told her. I felt like she was not taking care of some responsibilities because she had a habit of letting men be her main focus and not taking care of the really important things she needed to in her life. right? Like real responsibilities that
If
she
you
needed to
were
be
her
taken
man,
care of.
wouldn't that be a good thing?
Right.
I
And
mean,
so,
you were
but
dating her, that use that to your advantage.
well, that was a problem. I was like, listen, you keep giving up your life for these men, and now you're doing that for me. But then when everything is over, you blame the fact that you didn't get done the things that you really needed to get done because of some man. I'm like, I'm not gonna be that guy.
Look
Go
at you being all
take care of your.
altruistic.
I was like, right, like go take care of your shit, you know. And this was years ago. So I talked to her and she goes, yeah, and I remember us breaking up and you just couldn't handle being in a relationship and I had to let you go be free and just be the musician because you wanted to tour and do all this stuff. And I was like, oh, that's so not how I remember it going. I was like, and now listen, maybe I'm equally as deluded as she is, right? And maybe I was like, fuck you, bitch, I'm going on the road, man, you know? But I don't remember it that way. I remember looking at her and thinking, wow, she's like making a mess of her life because she wants to be here with me. Well, she lived like three states away. You know what I mean? And I was like, this is
Oh, in
just
New
like,
Jersey, that can be 10 minutes, though.
right,
You,
exactly.
Delaware, Connecticut, and
Yeah, I mean,
Pennsylvania, you're all, like New York, you're all tucked into one another.
yeah, it's a nice little loop that we have going here. But I was just like, this is not okay. Like you have stuff to do, and that's how I remember it. And she remembers it as her having to be the altruistic one and let me be free because I needed to go do my music thing, and she didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? And I'm like, right, like we distort this stuff because I swear to you, I'm telling the truth. And she would swear to you she's telling the truth. And we're probably both right. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Right? Like, in a
I
real
know for a
sense.
fact I got dumped every time. So I
I
will
mean,
I will hand on my Bible go to my memories of the end of those relationships.
I know that like in this particular, but you might not remember it the way they remember it.
Oh,
Even if
absolutely. I'm sure we
you know
have
what I mean, like
different
the way they remember it may be very differently than the way you did,
here's the good
And
thing about my shitty memory though is I tend to take keep diaries, journals, and notes, and then I write about them. So I, for quite a while, had what the kids call receipts. I don't think I have many more other than what I translated into books and tales and other things than
mm,
that. But I kept pretty good notes of what was going on. For a while, I had
well,
quotes like,
I mean,
so,
you kept good notes of your interpretation of what was going on.
well, when you do it in the moment, well, sure, true, guilty, but I still got dumped.
I I only say that because like one of my friends was reading to me out of one of her journals from like seventh grade, and I remember finding like we like almost every English class I had made us keep journals, right? Even if they never read them, they just made sure we were writing them. And I found some of this stuff, and I've looked at my accurate representation of what was going on. I was like, oh, that's not really what was going on there. You know what I mean? Like in
Maybe it
retrospect,
was. Maybe you
like I
want to
wonder
remember it
what it is.
incorrectly as an adult.
Right. And that could be true too. That's the thing, man. Like at the end of the day, this stuff is so ridiculous. It is really about, it is a kind of religion. It's what you choose to believe, right? Like somebody asked me the other day about religion because I was like, religion could be the thing that saves the country or the world if applied appropriately. And they said, what religion would you do it with? I said, it doesn't matter. Like, like with each one of them, you have to choose to be blind to the stuff that makes it completely absurd, right? So just pick the one that you have the least things you need to be like, ooh, nope, you choose that one because pretty much all of them have pretty heinous things in their past, some heinous things in their present, and all kinds of shenanigans throughout the years. So just which one has the least amount of those, and I feel like that's how we live our lives. You know what I mean? Like just willfully being blind to certain things about our personalities
I was just going to say, usually
and
about
things like
ourselves.
that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Well, let's segue.
it's a religion, you know?
Let's segue into that other topic. The idea that fewer people are going to, we'll just say church. It can be anything. It can be synagogue. It can be what's the Muslim
Well,
one?
how
Imam? No,
about
that's the
a
leader.
mosque?
Mosque. Thank you.
Mosque, temple, church,
Yeah.
something like
Let's
that.
just
We
use
say
the word
houses of
church because
worship.
everybody understands it.
Oh, let's say houses of worship, and everybody's happy.
It's too politically correct for me.
Church.
See, I look at it. I look at houses as worship. When I say church, that's what I mean because it's a blanket statement. Because I don't give a fuck, and I know every individual religion likes to talk about their house of worship as being what it is. So it's like when I say everyone should be interested in Christmas, and people say, well, I'm Jewish, I'm not. I'm like, yeah, but I don't mean you have to worship Jesus. I'm just saying, look at Christmas as a time of year, like that everybody likes. Don't worry about like get rid of the religious aspect. And that's what I say with church is yeah, don't worry about the religious aspect of church. Just, a house of worship that happens to be called a church because it's easiest. Doesn't make sense, but I'm
Well, I mean, oh God, man, you're gonna make me go to this place. This is arguably this is what people would call a kind of supremacy. It's like let me decide what the term is that everybody should use for something. It's like you know what I mean
yes.
because it's like if you it's like
If
okay,
coming
well
from a
then,
place of the church is always right and the church is better than the synagogue, I'm saying it from a point of
well,
apathy of I don't feel like learning about anything. I'm
right,
saying
but I
it from
mean,
a point of
but that's right, but like it gets in and I know you don't mean anything by it, right? That's the thing. It's like, but it gets interpreted as, well, why
right.
not just say then it's Hanukkah season or Kwanzaa season if you're just gonna pick a word, or just say whatever. If you say it's Christmas time, but you won't say it's holiday time, why does it have to be Christmas? Right?
I
Like
think
it's
as
like
it's
that.
beaten into my head as a kid. I actually wrote an article that
Right.
said, let's take the Christ out of Christmas and just call it Christmas without Jesus. I don't know. I mean,
You're an ass, but
well,
you're
only
not
to Christians I
wrong.
am. I'm only an ass
But
to
you're not
Christians.
wrong. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like there's that meme where the cat has the glasses and the cat goes, when you say religion should be taught in school, is that all religions or
Oh,
just yours?
right.
Right? And it's funny because it's like, right, like at the end of the day, we grew up in a Judeo-Christian world. Like all my references on that's what I mean. Like when people say Christmas time, I don't think Jesus, I don't think religion, I think presents and trees
Same. Yeah.
and bright lights and shit like that. When like, our calendar is based on Christian stuff, I'll say Jesus Christ, in a moment of fit. Like I don't I mean, like all the references and all of our fairy tales and myths, like it's all Judeo-Christian mythology woven into the stuff that we like.
Well,
No,
I
but I
mean,
mean, like when
Christianity
you,
and Judaism, that's all a myth too. I mean, it's just the
but
most popular one.
but this is what I mean. It's like this stuff is woven into all of our. It's just popular culture.
Right.
It's like you just watch it and you can understand. Like I understand why white people feel like they're under attack sometimes when I watch modern television shows, because I watch older television shows even just from 10 years ago, you know, and the kind of anti-Muslim black people are gang members, all this stuff was just it was just a thing. It was just normal, right? It was just like a normal thing that like everybody else is the other and this is who they are. And there's always like tokens and stuff, and it's really kind of cool. But now I watch TV and I see something very different. You know what I mean? Like I see something in which like I get it, because when I watched those old TV shows, I didn't recognize it. I just watched them and I just kind of annoyed me when I would watch it, but I would
Well,
still watch them. Do you know
can
what
we
I mean?
break it down by
Does that make
decade though?
sense?
Because I think the
Yeah.
70s were fairly good, and then the 80s maybe okay, and the 90s got worse, and now it's getting better again because I go back to movies like Smokey and the Bandit and The Warriors. You remember The Warriors? I mean,
Hmm.
that was a fully integrated gang system. I
Absolutely.
mean, and it
Yeah.
was just, it
Absolutely.
looked and felt normal. It didn't look like, oh, now you have to have a token black person. Now you need a token white person. Like today, like you said, it's a token.
Absolutely.
And Smokey and the Bandit, same
Absolutely.
thing. When Snowman goes into that cafe, it's like, oh yeah, this is just the cafe, and his friends are, or they threw an Asian driver and an Asian truck driver that felt completely normal. They didn't give him a name
Yeah.
like, hey, this is White Rice Express, ching chong ching. He just like, hey, Smokey, this, and he happened to be Asian. He just happened to be Asian, but he spoke, and he was just a truck driver,
Absolutely.
and it just felt like a multicultural movie, even though
Yes.
the essence of it was white with Burt Reynolds and all. And I think that somewhere along the way, like my buddy does not like the movie Captain Marvel. He said the entire movie to me just screamed, "Hey, look, I have a black friend." And I got a little of that because it didn't look like, it didn't feel natural like Smokey and the Bandit race relations felt natural. This felt more politically correct, like, okay, the best friend has to be black so that we show that we have multiculturalism.
Well,
Whereas,
I
like I said,
mean, this,
the Warriors, that movie's fantastic, and it was black and white, and there was but it was,
but
it didn't feel like pandering. Everyone just
well, all right. But
was.
let me come at this from a different direction.
Sure, sure.
I do
And
agree
we've
with you
really
though,
started
because
talking about the religion thing by talking about the
I
Warriors.
know, and here we are. But like, I mean, I know I read an article once about the magical Negro and all that stuff, and also the black friend,
We talked
right?
about that
Like
here.
we did. And there's a big thing with the black friend because the black friend liberalizes the white character
Hmm.
without having them actually have to do anything. Right? They don't have to make any like liberal, overtly liberal anything.
Well, liberal
But they
or,
have a black friend.
okay, let me interrupt. I
You know what I
apologize. So
mean?
not only liberal, but
Mhm.
is it also just sort of a signal like, oh, that's a good person? They have like, is that what it is? Oh, they
Right,
must be a good person
exactly.
because they have.
Right, exactly. But it also shields them from having to take any real liberal stances on anything. Right, from right, and still like you can attract a liberal and a conservative audience. You know what I mean? By just giving your person a black friend, because then they don't have to like. Then you never talk about abortion, right? The liberals are happy, and everyone goes, "See, we're not racist." Like everybody's happy by that one move, that one
Right.
motion. Anyway, and I fucking feel like I lost my point that I actually wanted to talk about. Tell me what you said, and it will lead me back to the whole
I don't remember. We had started, we were going to
point.
talk about the loss of religion in America, and somehow we ended up on race
No, we're talking about
and TV
the
shows.
other the other way it happens. So all right, so I love watching these like stupid cop procedural shows, right? Where like the cops always figure out the crime in the last minute, you
Yeah.
know. Some shit I inherited from my mother because she used to read Agatha Christie novels, and I basically watched the equivalent of that. All the Law and Order type shows are like the equivalent of like an Agatha Christie novel to me, you know. So I watched some of these things, and there's like everybody's there. The obligatory everyone is the squad room. It's this team of people, right? And when something happens, they're in LA. So when something happens in the Spanish neighborhood, the Latin X neighborhood, is that what we're supposed to say these days,
No, that's
right?
gone.
The
The Latino community said Latinx
Afro
is the
Latino,
dumbest goddamn thing they've ever
right?
heard.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Latinos.
when it's like some kind of Latino gang, the Latino guy's always like, oh, like when it's a Latino kid who something happens to, he cares a lot, and everybody else feels bad for him because something happened to one of his people, right? And then something happens to a little black girl, and the black couple's like, ah, and he's ready to beat up the suspect, and and I was like, oh my god, something happened to one of his people, and I was like, right, it looks liberal, but it's conservative as shit because it's somehow implying that you don't have to care about people who don't look like you. And that's not what it's saying.
Oh,
But it's saying, like, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Like,
And the reason I laughed, I'm not laughing at
you
what you're
know,
saying. What popped into my head is I always fucking hated this movie. I just thought it was so cheesy and bad. But I thought of Matthew McConaughey going, and now pretend she's
Right.
white. And I'm just like,
Right,
oh, for
exactly.
fuck's sake. I mean, I thought it was so corny the
Exactly.
entire movie. And then I
Right,
got to that point and it's supposed to be delivered like, oh, just knock it off. And so many people were touched by it,
right,
like, oh my goodness.
right. But I mean, but the reality is that as cheesy as it was,
It worked. It made 100
he
some plus
had.
$1 million,
I
made him a
mean,
star.
but he has a point because
Yeah, he did.
like like as ridiculous as it is, he has a point, right? Like we're trained by all the stuff we see to care about certain things. That's what I mean. Like our belief system is based on a bunch of stuff. It's not true, right? It's not, like, you know what I mean? Like half the stuff that we believe.
Oh, there's someone fertile. Did you hear that? The
I
lawnmower
did.
outside. I'm like, who's mowing their lawn? But I guess it's a fertilizer company in my yard. Sorry, I apologize.
But
Always something. Last week it was a cat. No, that was 2 weeks ago. There was a stray cat running
I
around
know.
outside.
I
This week it's
remember
a
that.
loud.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just interrupted you. I
Well,
apologize. I was just so taken
yeah.
aback. It was so loud here.
Well, I don't even know what the fuck were we even talking about. No.
Well, let's.
Kidding.
We're running up on an hour. We're getting close.
Yeah.
Let's try and focus a little on the religious thing because I thought it was funny when I read the article that fewer people are going to a house of worship these days than ever before. What I found funny is if I had read that even up to 5-10 years ago, 10 years, I would have I would have pulled a Nelson from The Simpsons. I just like now that I'm older, I still I'm torn. There's a good chunk of me that thinks it's a good thing. I mean, I really despise the religion that goes so hard where it's gay is bad. Yeah, women's health is bad. Male supremacy and a lot of religions. Now, this is where I will use a blanket statement because this is not exclusive to Christianity. A lot of religions have problems with sexism and racism and homophobia. So there's a good chunk of me that really, but there's another side that realizes when I was in college and I donated my time to a food pantry, that food pantry was in a rectory basement, or is the basement just called a rectory? It was in a church basement. The food pantry I donate to today, I always buy an extra item or an extra something or other at the store and put it in a bag. When the bag is full, I take it to the food pantry. That's my liberal guilt that I try to assuage. It's at a church. It's at a church here in town. That's the only
Does it
food
work?
pantry in town.
Does it assuage your guilt? Do you feel better?
No, I still do it though. It's like I know I'm a horrible person that is going to hell. So I figure, I'm trying to bump myself back into coach as opposed to the first class I've always lived in on that train to hell. Yeah, there are religions that are taking in refugees at the border. There are churches and ministries that supply the blankets and try and find housing for. I mean, religion can do a lot of good. And I used to just blanket statement as, oh, they're all anti-gay, fuck them. And now I'm torn because you have the Sarah Palin religious type, which to me is not religion, or the evangelicals who supported Trump. And then you have the genuine, like our friend Michael that was on many, 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 many weeks ago, and seemed like that is what Christianity should be. That is what a follower of Christ should be. Someone that took Christ's message at face value. Christ said, do not worship me, emulate me. And the best Christians emulate, and the worst ones go, oh, well, he said, don't worship him. We should set up a church and, take money and pay off. They do the exact opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think that it's an interesting dilemma because it's true. There's a similar argument I've had with many atheists, and I say that because I don't know where I stand in the mix. We've talked about this before, but like I've said this many times, I've played in many churches, and I was the music director of a church for many, many years, and some of the nicest people that I met were there, and this was in an upper middle class white neighborhood that was largely Republican. So most of the friends I made there were Republicans. You know what I mean? Not, I won't say Republican, they were conservative.
Yeah.
And I liked them. They were all very, very nice to me. I liked them all very, very much. I felt a genuine warmth from them. We disagreed politically. This is pre-Trump when you could disagree politically with people,
Yeah.
and still
And not be
remain friends
considered
with,
insane.
right? Somehow still be friends with them, you know. And I would think, right, like every year they did a coat drive where people were supposed to bring in either brand new or barely used coats to take to people who are going to be freezing to death. And they constantly were doing food runs and they were constantly sending the kids off to build houses with people in places where they were really poor, sending these kids off to live there for like a month and do real fucking work. Like, like real fucking work
The
to
food
help poor
pantry here
people.
has a thing with coats also.
Yeah,
They aren't
man.
doing it during the pandemic, but what you said is because they're religious, they're very kind about it. But they sort of say in the most loving way manner, hey, don't just give us your shit clothes that you just don't want to, know what to do with. If you're
Right.
going to give a coat, make sure
Yeah.
it's a nice coat. We're not your dump.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that's,
Yeah.
because that's what I hate to say, that's what goodwill is. It's like, oh, I'm done with
Right.
this. Let's just give it to Goodwill. Um,
Right.
and yeah, so when you say your church or the church goes out of its way to say, let's do a new or lightly used coat, I mean, it's putting in an effort now. And again,
Yeah.
there's no 100% because at the same time, there is the Catholic Church that paid untold millions of dollars to cover up pedophilia. I mean, it's absurd. Like, and let's
Absolutely.
not even
And
go
then
down
there,
that path. But
and then there's also Catholic nuns who were amazing teachers and taught people who became great. And then there's the Jesuits who have their schools where some really smart people come out of it.
yeah,
And there's priests who are phenomenal people
yep.
who have been, you know what I mean? Like this is the problem. This is what we we're talking about earlier. You have to choose what you're gonna be okay with.
Well,
Like you
okay.
just
Let
have
me
to
go back
pick the
to
place where the hypocrisy is because there's gonna be some.
it's
Always.
also something you have said in the past when it comes to when we talk about race relations or anything, or nothing is a monolith.
Yeah.
Even religion is not a monolith. Nothing to blanket statement
Right.
anything is
Right.
incorrect because everything has good and bad, and it's just a matter of extremes. Like you said,
Yeah.
back republicanism before Trump, when you could disagree but still get along. Um, you know, today everything seems to be an extreme. Either it's difficult
Yeah.
to say I see some good aspects of the church. What about the boy fucking? All right, well, see, I'm not talking about that aspect. I'm talking about the food pantry. I mean, it's that's why I say it's
Right.
complicated. You had asked me a while ago,
Yeah.
less religion, fucking great, good. We need less religion.
Right.
Today, I find that it's the extremes I like less. I don't like the extreme religious that are out there and like protesting abortion clinics and um, telling certain people they're going to hell, uh, be it their sexuality or just for any reason. I think you're a sinner for whatever reason. I don't like those people at all. At the same time, I know I have friends that are wonderful people that are Christians that are completely tolerant, that understand, choice, that understand sexual
Yeah.
orientation. And so I
Yeah.
can't,
I
it's
know.
difficult you can't
Yeah.
blanket statement anything.
I know plenty of intolerant people who
Aren't religious.
don't
Yeah.
ever go to church, right?
Yeah.
Plenty of them. I mean, I think that again, it comes down to what we initially started talking about, though. I think that,
Relationships. Is this about a
yeah,
relationship with God?
it is. Well, partially, yes,
Yeah.
oddly enough, but I feel like we have given, we've put we've put our identity that used to be wrapped up in what religion we are, right? It really was an important thing, right? Like a cross religion marriage, even among Christian sects, was considered like an interracial relationship. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
our buddy,
that was like
I
some
won't
real
name him, our
shit,
college friend married into Judaism, and he came from a Southern Baptist tradition, even though he wasn't. And that was looked at with a little suspicion.
Right. Like that was just like, what are you crazy? But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I can remember Baptists and Protestants are trying to get together, and people are like, oh my God, what is, or Catholics or somebody else? It's just like, it was like absurd. It was unheard of.
I
because
remember
you
being a
know,
kid and not understanding really the line in the Blues Brothers where they I found they pissed off the Illinois Nazis. They drove through the parade, and so the
yeah,
Nazis want revenge, and they say, we discovered where Jake and Elwood live. And I can't remember the line that precedes it, but they say, oh, something something, and the guy goes, even worse, he's a Catholic. And I'm like,
right,
Nazis hate Catholics? Like, it was just so odd but yeah,
right, yeah. That's some funny shit.
it
But yeah,
is.
I think now. I mean, it's funny because we talk about identity politics, but we've always had it, right? Like it used to be
See,
about
that's
religion
really the
and
new religion,
race,
not relationships, but politics.
right? But it's like, but it's politics, it's relationships, it's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's all these things again that reinforce who it is we think we are or who we
Yep.
want to be perceived as. And it used to be church did a lot of that, right? Like where you went to church did a lot to talk about your identity. And now all these other things have taken its place. But the identity politics have always been there, right? They've almost haven't changed. Even the fighting and the talking about it and all that stuff, it's just we pick different battle lines all the time. But the fights are still there. You know what I mean? Like they really are. Like
And it's just, I think it's just that the fights are more visible now because, I mean, you would never, ever in your life have a, 10-way phone call where people just argued with one another. Now you jump on Facebook or Twitter and you just have a
right,
thread of people fighting.
right. That's right. And because of the anonymity of it, they can say some of the most vicious things that they'd never say to your fucking face. You know what I mean? Like never. You want to talk about like what we talk about? If people said the kind of things I say to myself in my head, I'd fucking punch them. I'd kick them in the neck. If people talk to me in real life the way people talk to me on Facebook, I punch them in their fucking face,
Oh,
break their nose. You kidding me?
I saw
Jesus.
the best TikTok. It was it's two dogs separated by a fence, and they are just barking at each other, and one of them is just baring his teeth, and they look vicious as shit. And someone put the label of arguments on Facebook, and then they open the fence, and the dogs just sort of freeze, and they just sort of like go, like look around, and then they close the gate again, and they go back to barking. And when they open the fence, it says arguments in real life. And then so it's 30 seconds of this. The guy just keeps opening and closing the gate, and the dogs literally go from viciously barking, and the instant they have the opportunity, they're like, nope, just going to sit here. And they wait until it is closed again to go nuts. It's hilarious. It's a great video.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, man.
All right.
Yeah,
Did we
that's
resolve
interesting
anything
shit.
today? Maybe.
I think we solved the world's problems again.
Yeah.
I
We
mean,
do a good job at that.
I think it's actually interesting though. I do think that the religion identity thing and lack thereof, because it comes with a certain set of problems, right? Like we could get rid of religion because religion might be in a certain way an outdated way of doing a certain thing, right?
I agree. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know, but like because like you're saying, it does a lot of good and it instills a lot of morality and a lot of stuff. It also encourages a certain kind of tribalism, you know?
Yeah.
And
It
I
does
don't know
good.
that
It
we
does
could
bad.
have
It's,
and can we have one world religion? Is that possible? Right? Like how do you do that with systems that are thousands of years old?
well, not just
You
that.
know what I
I
mean? Like
don't know that you need one.
do that?
It's
You
the
know?
problem is to me, the, I don't know how to put this, not the pawns, but not the peasants, but when you see really, truly great religious leaders, not just religious leaders, but really good ones, like you would see Bishop Tutu
Mhm.
conferring with the Dalai Lama, and they would get along,
Right.
or with a
Right.
Muslim imam, and they would all sit
Oh,
around.
that's true.
And
You're
even when you
right.
see
Yeah, no, that's
a
yeah.
rabbi and an imam that
Yeah.
say that get along and talk like these, they don't get involved in the whole, Israel Palestine real kerfuffle. I'm not trying to diminish that problem, but I'm saying that they don't say, I am Jewish, you are Muslim, now we must hate each other because of that. But when you see really good religious leaders saying, I happen to be Jewish. My friend happens to be Muslim. We are both trying to find a path of God. And I respect, like they understand that there are different paths to the same finish
Yes.
line. And I
Yes,
like that
absolutely.
aspect. I think all too often we get caught up in the my way is right, your way is wrong bullshit.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that that's what we need, and it's true. Most of the most of the people on a high level, they do tend to get along with each other because because there's many paths, to get to the same destination. There's many
Yep.
paths. So yeah, that's what that. But yeah, I mean, that being said, like what you said is right. Like I feel like religion does do certain things that are really good.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so it like as much as I think it might be an outdated way of doing things, I don't know how else to instill in mass numbers of people how to behave properly. You know
Right.
what I mean? Because you see what do the streets look like in a world without religion and stuff. Like that's fucking madness. You know what I mean? There maybe would still be going on with that with religion because that looks like madness too, right? What people are doing in the name of their gods. Like, I guess it's all madness now that I say it out loud.
It is.
Anyway,
Life is
let's get out of
madness.
here.
You said they're all different paths, and made me think I was going to try to tie it all the way back to the beginning. Just like there are many different paths to your final happy relationship, you just have to go through the
Exactly.
breakups to get there. See how I
Yes,
did that? It's back where we
you
started.
did.
It's called a full circle.
Indeed. Indeed. Well done, sir.
All right, Barrett Ants Our Good One is going into the studio as the musical director of the Katie Henry Band, going to start recording
Yeah.
that album. So look for him at antargoodwin.com. Look for Katie Henry and the band at katiehenrymusic.com. I am at nathantimmel.com. And because I am very bad at what I do, I still have no landing page for my most recent book. So you don't go to nathantimmel.com and
Which is
see new.
fantastic, by the way.
What's that? What?
Which is fantastic, by the way. Your new book is
Oh, thanks.
fantastic.
I was just going to say
Yeah.
that I had said originally that I think it's more geared towards women, and I still kind of believe that because my wife's friends are going nuts. Like they are posting like shit on Facebook about it. Like I'm this far. I'm like they are really liking it, but at the same time, I'm getting more men saying they like it. I got a great compliment. My buddy Chad told me and then posted it on Facebook. He said, I haven't read a book since high school because that's when I was forced to. I bought Nathan's book just to be a nice guy, like just to support my friend. I'm like, well, I own the fucking thing. So I read the prologue. My friend Chad read the prologue, liked it so much that he was like, wow, he started talking about it at breakfast. So his daughter stole the book. Then his wife stole it. So those two are fighting over it. And he's like, I bought the goddamn thing. I want to read it. I haven't read a book since high school. But yeah, he liked the prologue so much that he's like, I'm actually going to read this, but now he can't. So people seem to like this book. It's called We Are 100 and it's on Amazon, and I'll put a thing up now. So,
Yeah,
all
dude.
right. Thanks
Dude,
for
that's
listening,
awesome, man.
Eric. Good seeing your face.
Yeah, you too, man. It's good to see you.